Hi, Jiminez. Great stuff. Thank you. So, just to kind of highlight, really a few things. Really, we haven't covered this yet in the syllabus, but I'm glad you've done it, and I'm going to go through it. Hi, Jiminez. Yes. Thank you for this. We haven't covered this area yet in the syllabus on the course, but I'm going to do it anyway because you've started studying it, so that's good. So, just a few things. You've asked a few questions, and let's start with the first one. So, in this topic, in this area, when they speak about budgeted, you see, usually a business will think of it like this: that you have a business, and you will have the offices are upstairs, here where the offices are, and you have the people working on the ground, the production team. And what we're really trying to do here is really assign a responsibility. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, assign responsibility. So typically, these guys here in the office will go out, do some market research, and come back and say that we believe that we can produce, or we believe we can sell, if you like, 1,000 units, which is why you'll see questions sort of start off that a company intends to produce and sell a certain amount of units. So this 1,000 units might be based on some market research that has looked at the demand for the product. So this is your budget. So the idea of this is where the first question about budgets come from. So they will prepare a budget and they will say, listen, we think that we can produce 1,000 units. Remember, this information is coming from the top. We're also trying to look at what happens and how well things are produced, and if they did produce it to the time we felt, and if they used the right amount, if they used less or more than the kilograms we expected. I'll talk about that in literally a second, but let me just focus on budget. So here we have this as the budget. Now, this is where the language of budget comes from. Now we expect, and I'll just change my pen color, we expect that they will use certain resources. This is where standard comes from. So certain resources must be used to make these output, to come out with this output. And that's typically material and labor, right? And we will now pay, if you like, for this material, and also pay for labor. So the price at which we pay for them. This business here is what we refer to as standards. Right? So you can see here, looking at the language here, they talk about the standard quantity of material. That's what so in a way it feels like budgeted, but it's typically linked to the resource. That's the issue here. But the real issue of budgeted is to do with these number of units. So think of it like that. It's just language that you come to understand. And they then talk about a standard price of 3 kilograms, right? Which is why they can then say something like this, that the actual output, so the difference of what was actually made was 950 and the actual material price was this. And then they can talk in that fashion. So let's look at the question first of all. The question says that what were the standard, let's focus on the standard. What was the standard material cost for that period? So, and the budgeted material cost for that period. So let me look at budgeted first because that's where everything starts. So they believe that they will make 1,000 units. And they believe they will make 1,000 units, and they also believe that, of course, if they're going to make 1,000 units, this is what they set up in their budget plan, that they will spend on each unit. They expect you to use 5 kilograms, which is really the standard cost, if you like, but ultimately it's based on this number of units. That's the issue here, and you'll see why it's slightly different. And 5 kilograms times, of course, how much you expect to pay, 3. So this is the plan. This was your budget. Ultimately, this is your initial budget, and this comes to 15,000. I'm just going to change my pen color back. But you see, we now move into this area, and I will discuss this when we talk about this, is that when I really want to judge the people here, ultimately, right, I cannot judge them. I want to judge them on how well they use the resources. And I cannot judge them based on 1,000 units. You see, this was just this high scheme. These guys could have said 10,000. They could have said, listen, we intend to sell 10,000 units, and this is what their budget would have been, 10,000 times 5 times 3, which would have been 150,000. Now, the question says, or tells us that they only made 950 units. The only reason these guys made 950 units was because actual demand in the end was 950 units. I can't blame the production team for this. So I now have to judge the production team based on the number of units they made, which is why we come to this area of standard cost. So I now ignore what that plan was for 1,000 units. And I say, okay, listen, how many units did you guys actually make? Okay, you made 950 units? No problem. At least I'm not blaming you for demand anymore. But this now means that what can I benchmark you against? I expected you to use 5 kilograms for each of these units. That has nothing to do with external demand. This is about efficiency now. And I also expected you to, if you like, buy them in at £3. So really here again we have more responsibility, because typically you could argue there's a production manager here and there's a purchasing manager here, but they're both in this area here in terms of buying the resources. Right, so what we now have is, if you like, what we refer to as the standard cost. And typically in simple language, the standard cost is based on the actual number of units that were actually made. So we're no longer in sort of budget cost where you're basing it on the 1,000 units. We will always look at that difference and find out why, but that has nothing to do with what's going on here, if you like, in production. So a lot of the variances we're looking here are production house variances, and we cannot bring in the issues of what's happening upstairs in the offices. So when you do 950 times 5 times 3, you arrive at 14,250. And that's the language really for this area. But we will explore this, and I hope this helps. I think it's good you're looking at it now before thinking about formulas, because if you can understand what's going on, your mind starts to get its head around it. Cool, great stuff. Hope that helps.